From Khabib almost choking McGregor to death to Bisping straight up spitting at Rivera's cornerman. Here are some MMA fights that got way too personal. And we know when it comes to getting personal, Thiago Silva versus Brandon Vera at UFC 125 takes the cake. It looked like a pretty even matchup. Things then quickly took a turn for the worse for Vera as Silva dominated the fight with his superior strength and hard-hitting punches. In fact, Silva broke Vera's nose so badly that it ended up looking like a beak. But that wasn't even the lowest point for Vera. In the third round, Silva found himself in control, but instead of just finishing the fight, he started playing bongos on Vera's back like it was some kind of drum set. It only lasted for a few moments before Silva went back to pounding on Vera's head, but the deed was done. And to add insult to injury, it was later revealed that Silva had failed a post-fight drug test for anabolic steroids. That's pretty messed up. It's clear that Silva took this fight way too personally, kinda like the time Ronda Rousey refused to follow ring courtesy during a fight. Yeah, I'm talking about the infamous Rousey versus Miesha Tate rivalry, and how things got heated both inside and outside the octagon. Tate had been taunting Rousey and her trainer, Edmond Tarverdyan, in the lead-up to their fights, and when they finally faced off at UFC 168, Rousey emerged victorious with a third-round armbar finish. But instead of showing some sportsmanship and shaking Tate's hand, she completely ignored Tate and celebrated with her corner. Talk about being petty. Rousey's excuse was that Tate was just playing nice for the cameras and wouldn't have shaken her hand anyway. But fans weren't having it. They said she could have been the bigger person and shown some respect to her opponent, especially after such a heated rivalry. But it doesn't top the most iconic MMA rivalry in recent years. Did someone say Khabib versus McGregor? Yeah, let's get into that whole mess. And let's start from the beginning. McGregor and Khabib had been going at it for months before the fight. They were throwing verbal punches at each other left, right, and center. But things took a serious turn when Conor and his entourage attacked the bus that Khabib was on, throwing chairs and breaking windows. This incident left Khabib understandably angry and ready for straight-up bloodshed. Khabib had a score to settle, and he wasn't gonna let McGregor off easy. He told Dana White that he was going to smash his face in, and he wasn't joking. It just kept getting worse when Khabib revealed that McGregor had insulted his dad. That was the last straw for Khabib. When the fight began, Khabib dominated from the get-go. He took McGregor down and put him in a rear naked choke. McGregor tapped, but guess what? Khabib would not let go. The referee had to come in and intervene physically and literally pry Khabib off McGregor. But that still wasn't enough to cool Khabib's rage. He was so angry that he jumped out of the octagon and went after McGregor's cornermen. Security had to step in to break them apart. It was a shocking end to a shocking fight, and it's safe to say that their rivalry will go down in MMA history. You would think Conor would know better after this, but nope. He went ahead and stirred up drama again during his fight against Poirier. During the trilogy fight between McGregor and Poirier, the Irishman's ankle snapped in the middle of the fight, but that wasn't the end of the drama. McGregor was lying on the ground in pain, screaming insults at Poirier, saying his wife was in his DMs. Ouch, that's a low blow. And he didn't stop there. He continued to rant and rave, and even threatened to take the fight outside, shouting that it wasn't over. McGregor also invited Poirier's wife to an after-party at the Wynn nightclub. Conor wanted it to be known that it was a doctor's stoppage. But let's be real, McGregor was actually losing that fight anyway. Poirier had been dropping bombs, and Conor was struggling to defend himself. In response, Poirier called him a dirtbag after the fight. A pretty timid response, all things considered. Fans weren't happy with McGregor's behavior both inside and outside of the octagon. McGregor's always been known for his trash talk, but this time he took it too far. His ankle may have snapped, but his ego was bruised even more. Speaking of bruised egos, remember when Michael Bisping spat at Jorge Rivera's cornerman during their historical fight? Going into their fight at UFC 127, Rivera decided to take a page out of the trash-talking playbook and go after Bisping. He recorded a series of videos mocking everything about the British fighter, from his fighting style to his family background and even his accent. And well, it worked. Bisping was fired up like never before when he stepped into the ring with Rivera. He outstruck Rivera in the first round before landing a blatantly illegal knee to his downed opponent. The ref deducted a point from Bisping, but Rivera was never able to recover from that shot. Bisping finished Rivera off in the second round with a series of strikes, and then came the shocker. Bisping taunted Rivera, telling him to go home, loser, but that wasn't all. He also made his way towards Rivera's cornermen and spat at them because he believed they were involved in the videos too. Now, you might argue that Bisping's show of disrespect was warranted, but let me tell you, it made him one of the most hated fighters in the whole UFC. And you know what? Bisping didn't care. He went on to embrace his role as the villain, and it seems he was damn good at it too. Another famous UFC villain that comes to mind is Silva, and that's why I have to mention his fight against Demian Maia. This fight was one of Silva's masterworks, but one moment stood out as the most personal thing we've seen in the octagon. You guessed it, that thigh punch. But it didn't stop there. In round 3, Maia's face was bleeding, and Silva just looked bored with the whole thing. He threw in some side kicks to spice things up, but nothing major. Silva was still dancing around and showboating, but not as much as in round 2. And Maia? Well, he still wouldn't stand with Silva. So what did Silva do? He threw another punch to the thigh. I mean, this guy just didn't give a damn. He even tried to hide behind the ref at one point, but got pushed back into the fight. By the end of the fight, Maia was nowhere near Silva on the scorecards. It was a total beatdown. When things get as personal as they did in this fight, you know it's going to be a wild ride. It did not top this next fight though. When it comes to Jon Jones' most personal in-cage moment, we have to talk about his fight against Daniel Cormier at UFC 182. These two had one of the most heated rivalries in UFC history, and it all started at a pre-fight press conference that turned into an all-out brawl when Cormier shoved Jones and the champion lunged for him. Once they got into the octagon, it was clear that Jones was dominating proceedings, and with seconds left on the clock, instead of just cruising to a comfortable victory, Jones decided to get really disrespectful. He threw his arms up in celebration before proceeding to throw some more punches at Cormier, and as if that wasn't enough, he aimed a classic pro wrestling taunt at his enemy. Yeah, a crotch chop. Cormier looked like a broken man after the defeat, and to add insult to injury, Jones said in a later interview that he hoped he was crying somewhere. I mean, talk about doubling down on your disrespect.
Hey, to break a record, to become a part of American history in this way, UFC history in this way, I wouldn't want it easy. I would not want it easy. If this stuff was easy.
We all know that rivalries in the octagon can get heated, but this was on another level. This was one of the craziest moments in MMA history. And that's all I have on the MMA fights that got personal. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.